Alright. So another week means another 6 movies.
Yes.
We have a comedy, an animated movie, 3 horror movies, and a movie that nobody's ever going to probably ever hear of after this video. Because we needed filler, I guess.
We need filler?
Maybe one person will track it down. I don't know. But first we're going to start with the more obviously high-profile ones.
Yes.
I guess we'll start with 23 Jump Street first.
Okay.
Which is the extremely self-referential sequel.
Yeah.
To 21 Jump Street, which in itself was... basically, its whole gimmick was the self-referential thing.
Yeah.
Because that's the age we live in now, with comedies. Are self-references and cameos. It sounds like I'm bashing it, but or I'm getting ready to, but I'm not. We start off... Obviously, it's based off a TV show.
Yep.
I don't think this was the TV show that I saw one episode in health class once. I don't think it's that type of show, but they stick with the TV vibe by starting with a previously on segment.
I thought that was awesome.
Where they show us clips from they show us the whole highlight reel of the first movie, basically, to get us where we are. And they throw in, I don't remember this being in the first one, I think they threw it in for comedy, the Annie Hall bit with the lobsters. Was that just thrown in there to be funny, or was that scene in
I
there?
vaguely remember it, but not... Like I said, it's been a while since I've seen the movie.
They brought it back later, so it might just be one. Because I haven't seen the... I saw the original twice in theaters, and then twice when it came out on DVD, but that was like almost 2 years ago. I would have last seen it, so I don't remember. But the Annie Hall joke is still funny.
Yeah, definitely.
And as far as the plot's concerned, as the movie reminds us over and over again, it's just retreading the exact same thing.
Yep.
Because we have Nick Offerman's character, who was the one that called out, being unoriginal in the first one. And he's saying now people want the same thing over and over again exactly. It's a jab at sequels in general, but I think it's like a very also unsubtle jab at The Hangover specifically.
Yeah, I can see that.
But sequels in general. How it's basically just going to be the same story, just in a different setting.
I like your idea better. Obviously.
But obviously the movie ended with Ice Cube saying you're going to college, and they say what, and then and they're sticking with that, of course. So they go undercover exactly as they did in the first one with the exact same names. And basically the exact same plot plays out exactly the same way. Which is the whole joke of the movie. And yeah, as you've probably heard, apparently this was like Sony's best tested movie they've ever released or something like that. It actually starts off as an action movie. It's not purely, obviously, but it's doing the whole entire first segment is shot exactly like a Michael Bay movie, with the roofs and the sun and the shots and everything, which I think was kind of it's kind of an in-joke reference that they cast Peter Stormare as the villain, because Peter Stormare is one of the villains in Bad Boys 2, among many other things, Fargo most notably, but and The Last Stand. So it's kind of hard to review a high-profile comedy, because you basically to talk about what's good about it is to go into the jokes, which for a comedy is basically giving away the jokes is basically spoilers.
Yeah, definitely.
Not even plot spoilers, just in general. But the way this one goes with the story is there was a girl who was killed after there was a new drug now. It's not holy fucking shit anymore. Now it's Wi-Fi.
Ingenious name.
Which is a whole acronym, obviously.
And he calls it wipey because, of course, he's so out of focus with everything that's going on right now.
And there are references galore, and there is the thing they do with the story is, what Nick Offerman does is he basically takes us through everything that's going to happen in the movie. And then it happens exactly like that. It's like an Edgar Wright movie. And of course they talk, there is one particular joke that goes through the whole movie. But they manage to build off of it and make it work so well that it doesn't get old.
No.
And they take it to funnier places than the scene before and stuff like that. It's this running joke where the entire other half of the story is basically a Janko and Schmidt love story. Where he has literally a meet cute with a football player, Janko does. And they hit it off immediately, and Schmidt is extremely jealous. And basically plays his jealous, why don't you hang out with me, spend time with me kind of person. Because he's spending all of his time with the football player now. Even though Schmidt also has his own love story, which goes into a whole joke that I won't spoil. So. And there's not really... I will go ahead and say this plot point, even though I guess you can consider it spoilery if you want to, skip ahead really fast, but it's revealed really early, and from a really funny joke involving, the only thing they have to identify the dealer as is with a picture that we have, you saw Rob Riggle and Dave Franco come back in the trailer. And he identifies a tattoo, and that's the only thing they have to go on. So they're basically looking, it's basically the ring with the missing stone in Ace Ventura.
Yeah.
And they just go around looking for whoever has this tattoo. And there's one guy that's the obvious target. And it's actually the person with the tattoo is the football player that Django is now BFFs with. And the tattoo that the other guy had was of his old school mascot, the Red Herring. And it's just little clever jokes like that through the whole thing. The only problem with this kind of movie, the whole self-referential thing works really well most of the time, but at the same time, this is one of those movies where even though it's basically trying to be original by taking its unoriginal premise and doing the things with it that it does. But the trouble with that is after 2 movies now, you start to get used to the formula. And even the jokes that might seem coming out of left field to be original might be a little more expected than they had intended. But then again, with this type of movie, you really can't tell because this is the kind of movie where if the joke is expected, that could also be the joke. It's kind of...
Yeah.
Because these guys, their names are Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, I think.
Yep, that's correct.
They've done these 2, and they've done the Lego movie. And they're basically going to be huge. I was really disappointed. They were offered Ghostbusters 3. And I think they'll be the guys that can really do this, taking nostalgic material and making it modern and still extremely successful and extremely clever and witty in the context of it. But they turned down Ghostbusters 3, so we're not going to have a clever or witty Ghostbusters 3 if it ever comes to be. Which before they were involved, everybody knew anyway. But anyway, and there's this ongoing joke about how Ice Cube goes on a tangent about the budget regarding the department and what they have to go on. Which, of course, is an extremely obvious and blatant reference to the actual movie's budget.
Yeah.
Because since they're a sequel and they were basically made on double their budget, they can have double the stuff to work with. Because he has his character his character is in like a giant glass office, and of course somebody says it's like a giant cube of ice.
Yes.
it's those jokes where you don't know if it's to make you laugh at the in-joke or to intentionally make you groan. It's a combination of both, I think.
I'm wearing $800 shoes and you can't even see them.
And there is a very clever chase, a car chase, much similar to the one in the original. Where they're basically trying to avoid hitting things because of they don't have the budget for it. They're basically deciding what objects they're going to run into by how much of the budget we have left. Which, of course, they keep, it's the department budget, but,
Let's go through the building of robotics, and then all of a sudden they crash to the other side.
Yeah. And there is a lot of in-joke references to other movies. Like, there's 2 references to 2 different Channing Tatum movies.
Yeah.
Where when they're basically trying to decide what to do, Channing Tatum references going undercover as Secret Service agents. And I believe it was a joke on how little money White House Down made when I believe his actual line is, "I thought that would be a good idea."
Yeah.
At the end, there's a helicopter sequence that is right out of True Lies. Now, there is one joke you've probably heard about. It's not exactly a spoiler. You're probably hearing a lot about the end credit sequence.
Yes.
The ingenious end credit sequence. It actually starts with a joke at the beginning of the movie where the reason it's 22 Jump Street now is because the Koreans bought back the church. But there is a church right across a Vietnamese church right across the street with the address 22 Jump Street. And when they're making their way over there, they're talking about how convenient that is that just happened to be there. And then in the background, not so in the background, is a giant banner that says they're making condominiums on 23 Jump Street.
Yep.
But the ingenious thing with this credit sequence is, you asked me if 23 Jump Street was actually going to happen.
Yeah.
I think this credit sequence is basically... What I think happened is, I believe these guys... Because obviously these guys are brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
Them sitting in a room and saying, now that we've done the sequel humor, there's not a whole lot else we can do. It's not like the Scream trilogy where you can do trilogy jokes. So... Basically, if you don't want it to run dry, which would be the total opposite effect of what it's trying to go for, you're probably going to have to go ahead and just stop it after 2. So, they basically cover all possible ground in this end credit sequence.
Yeah.
Pretty much any possible direction this series can go is covered in this end credit sequence. It's like the Scorcher movies from Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
And obviously that brings in cameos galore, but we'll go into those at the end. As far as the actors that you do know in the movie, obviously there's Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, who are... I assume this was intentional. Obviously, Jonah Hill is now famously known as being the 2-time Academy Award nominated actor.
Yes.
So, for a lot of scenes for comedic effect, he has to be very dramatic. I'm wondering how that's going to change when Foxcatcher comes out for Channing Tatum.
We'll see.
So when 21 Jump Street came out, it was like, well, obviously, Jonah Hill's going to be the funny one, and Channing Tatum's going to be the straight one. But, it's kind of reversed now. It was never really that case to begin with, but that's what the conclusion that people jumped to when it came out. Well, the sides are kind of switched here now, kind of. Where, even though it's for comedic effect, Jonah Hill's playing it serious, it's Channing Tatum that gets to do the off-the-wall comedy stuff. Like a particularly long celebration in Ice Cube's office.
Yes.
And Ice Cube is really great here. Ice Cube is a lot better with comedy than you would think after only having seen like the Are We There Yet movies or something. There's a particularly hilarious scene where Ice Cube gets to take out a buffet table. Now, as far as, I guess the only thing we have left here is cameos. So I guess if you don't want to know those, you can kind of skip ahead. I assume you have by now. This is another one of those movies where you kind of expect... Basically, in these movies from now on, people are going to expect a shitload of cameos.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I guess from now is Muppets level cameos. Not quite that. There's surprisingly little amounts in here, unless there were some that I missed. Which could be the case, since I missed Ewan McGregor and I moved it out in the West the first time. I know where he is now, but... we had Patton Oswalt as a college professor.
So awesome.
And the only other one... The rest come in the credit sequence, but the only other one really in the movie is, we meet Ice Cube's wife. In jokes abound.
Yes.
Ice Cube's wife is Queen Latifah. And they make references to a lot of their... Yes, as you would expect. Now, obviously, when we get to the end credit sequence with all the different variations of where this series can go, I think they go all the way to like 43 before they go into the future.
Yes.
They end up in space, of course, because you always end up in space.
Even Jason went to space.
A leprechaun, too.
Yes.
There is a sinister chef played by Bill Hader, briefly. And they make the joke that was made a lot at the Franco roast by Bill Hader, actually. Where Jonah Hill and Seth Rogen could basically pass as the same actor. And I'll leave that at that.
Yeah, there's no reason to go further into depth into that one.
And of course, the funny thing is, when Johnny Depp and the other guy had their big cameos at the end of the first movie, word got out, if I remember correctly, that a couple of the other guys from the original TV show were supposed to have cameos in the first movie, but they thought it was a bad idea and didn't want to do it. But then obviously the first movie became what it was. Like Nick Offerman says, everybody expected it to fail and everybody thought it was a worthless idea. And then suddenly, somehow, it became this gigantic thing. So, I'm going to assume that's basically how they got. Who else was there?
It's interesting because you had Dustin Nguyen, who was from the original series, and he was actually Vietnamese Jesus. Something most people didn't catch. And at the very end of the movie, Richard Grieco does show up as Booker, and Jenko looks at him and is like, dude, you're a legend.
Yeah, speaking of Vietnamese Jesus, yeah, there is another drug sequence, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I said,
It's David DeLuise. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess it's getting a great, great reaction, and everybody seems to love it. I'm sure everybody will love it. But, as far as the type of humor they're going for, it's just... They should probably be careful, because, like I was saying, if you get used to the self-referential formula enough, the jokes start to get a little obvious before they happen. And, well, like I said, with a movie like this, you can never tell if that's intentional or not either. So, basically, if you go see this, you will laugh hysterically multiple times.
Yes.
And that's all you need to worry about. So,
It's Peter, not David. Sorry, I got the DeLuise sons confused for a second there. David's the one that was on Wizards of Waverly Place.
Alright.
Yeah, let's have some fun now.
Our second movie is the extremely highly anticipated How to Train Your Dragon 2. Because DreamWorks released the first one in 2010, and everybody in the world that wasn't me fell in love. Completely fell in love with this movie. It actually became one of the most critically acclaimed movies of 2010. despite missing a picture nomination
Thank God that
to Toy
didn't
Story
happen.
3.
Darn right.
So all our characters are returning, and obviously things are different now because dragons and man have decided to live together equally. I'm pretty sure this movie is making a lot of those types of references, but to look at it on the surface, it's dragons living equally and everything is perfect, and they're now dragon racing is now a sport, and Hiccup is basically some kind of hipster legend or something. So once the movie begins, we catch back up with everybody like you normally do.
Mm.
And then we see Hiccup and Astrid, and they're now a thing, basically. And they're out riding and doing their little romantic thing when suddenly they come across a bunch of ice. And the reason for this ice is there is a new evil dragon who is and that leads them to a trapper who for some reason is voiced by Kit Harington.
Yeah.
Who after the Pompeii review you know that I love so much. But he's not the real villain. The real villain is a warrior voiced by Jaimin Hounsou. And basically, they're going to use this dragon to wreak havoc, and Hiccup and Toothless once again have to save the day. But that's not the end of the plot. We have a second plot where Hiccup's long-lost mother is suddenly in the equation. After he thought she was dead. He thought she had been attacked by dragons or something a long time ago. That's what his dad, Gerard Butler, told him. But she is back now, and they basically have to form a new relationship as mother and son, and all that, while all this stuff is happening. Because this movie is all over the place.
Yeah.
And on top of your recurring characters, you have the characters voiced by Jonah Hill and Christopher Mintz-Plasse and T.J. Miller and Kristen Wiig. And Craig Ferguson, of course. Okay. I'm pretty positive that this movie is going to be loved by all.
Yep.
Much like the last one was. I really wish I could understand, but I can't. I don't know.
Yep.
But the problem... Okay. I know this is kind of... It might seem like I'm picking on somebody, but... one thing that I have a lot of trouble getting past... This isn't like a big main problem or anything. This is just... It's just one thing. The casting choice of Jay Baruchel as Hiccup. Now, I'm pretty sure he, won an Annie for voice performance when the first one came out. Not that the Annies matter.
No.
But I find this choice extremely distracting. Because, number one, Jay Baruchel's voice isn't exactly the kind of thing you want to hear for almost a 2-hour movie. And secondly, his voice does not in any way seem to match this character. I actually, every single time I look and watch the character of Hiccup, I see some animated character with Jay Baruchel talking in a sound booth, and it's being recorded over his mouth. So that's just one thing, though. For starters, okay, what we just talked about with 22 Jump Street. How the movie intentionally made the whole movie a joke about retreading the same thing over and over again for a sequel.
Mm.
When you're successful and need to make money. This could be two things. Obviously you can't say it's a totally pointless sequel because so many people became obsessed with the first one. But at the same time, maybe you could say that it was just a cash grab for DreamWorks. Maybe not for fans, but for DreamWorks, perhaps. because what I think these blinded fans, well, not, because they'll go in, they'll hear John Powell's score, they'll see the big sweeping shots of dragons flying over water, and they'll see the old characters from the first one, and they'll be swept away immediately just on principle.
Yep.
But what they might fail to realize is this is one of those movies that shamelessly, without calling it out, basically retread the same stuff. Because you have, in the first movie, Gerard Butler basically wanted to kill the dragons, and, you know, Hiccup had to work together with Toothless to stop him from doing that, and teach him that dragons can be good as long as you train them right. In this movie, we have the warrior, voiced by Jaimin Hounsou. I forgot his name. It's Drago something. It's something really, really basic villainy. So he comes in, and he wants to destroy all the dragons to basically claim power as man. But Hiccup and Toothless have to work together to stop him from doing that and convince him that he needs to train dragons, and they'll be fine. You have the parental turmoil. Hiccup is basically doing his absolute best to try and maintain this relationship with his dad and kind of keep it strong and, you know, not be estranged from him. Well, now we have Hiccup's mom, who he is trying to get close to and basically reconcile with and make sure he doesn't get estranged from again. And they had to stop the big evil dragon. So he and Toothless had to work together to stop the big evil dragon from killing everybody, the dragons and man. In this one, Jaimin has his ice dragon thing.
Yeah.
And Hiccup and Toothless have to work together so that that dragon doesn't kill everybody in the land again. Did the movie feel pretty familiar to you?
Yeah, it really did.
Almost like not a whole lot of effort was put into it?
Nope.
Okay. But as long as we have, you know, the PAL score and dragons flying over water into the clouds, everything's good. Everyone will love it, I'm sure. Because you do have those scenes. I mean, obviously it's really well animated, obviously. Yeah. Because you have those scenes like when they first go to Blanchett's place and use it, Kate Blanchett voices his mom. When they go to his mom's place, and there's also a really funny Kate Blanchett joke in 20 Jump Street.
Yeah, there is.
And we see all of the different dragons, and they have like all these different creative looks. That's where they didn't put shit into the story. They put all their creativity into the looks of the different dragons.
I buy that.
And then, you know, you have the race, the big race opening, and then right after that opening you have Hiccup and Toothless flying through the clouds, and then you have Hiccup gliding by himself, and all that. I'm sure people will love the visuals, that is fine. But what else does this movie have? And the trouble is that doesn't even keep it sustained, because once that half hour or so of visuals has pretty much run its course, the only thing you have left is a really fucking boring retread story for the next hour or so.
Yeah, this movie's too long, and it's an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know why it was so long. And a lot of those scenes are just like exposition.
Yeah. Basically
building up for this big battle scene at the end, which, whatever. By that point I had stopped caring. And as far as what some characters, these characters that you know and love from the first one, most of them, like the ones voiced by Jonah Hill, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and the twins, are basically there to kind of retread their act from the first one a little bit. And that's pretty much all they do. They just kind of are there in the background to do their thing. And in the first one you had Astrid as like this, you know, big warrior woman that, like, you know, did things her own way and was really competitive. It's basically just there to make like little remarks occasionally. And Toothless. Basically the whole first movie was about the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless. Toothless has basically turned into this movie Hiccup's comedy sidekick.
Yeah.
So much for training your dragon for an entire movie. Like I said, it tries to be more by doing underlying themes about war and equality and whatever they were trying to do there. They think if they throw in enough themes, they can make their story thin as shit and it'll work fine. That's what I think that's what was going on here. And you just feel absolutely connected to nothing. This is a tiny, well, not tiny, there is a major scene in this movie that should be an emotional powerhouse because something really drastic happens towards the end. I didn't feel anything. I saw it happen and I was like, this should be a really fucking big deal. It really didn't feel like a big deal to me. I didn't feel anything for that scene at all. And that's really bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sure I'm going to be in a massive minority. I think the critics are already like fawning all over it.
They are.
I gotta be honest, with this and the first one, I just don't get it.
Nope.
Because while the first one certainly also had its moments too, I never saw what other people saw in it either. Maybe there's some people that are just swept away by the genre in general. Like the dragons and the Vikings and all that shit. Like that, there are people that just love the genre and can just be carried away by it.
Yeah.
On principle, but
I get that.
I'm not one of those people. But I think a problem here is something lately that I've really been hating about myself, actually. I'm gonna just stall into self-hatred here for a second. I don't know if I don't think it's age. I don't know.
You're a lot more jaded as a moviegoer.
Lately, I can't get myself excited for animated movies.
Ooh, that's not good.
I don't think I've been really. I fell head over heels in love with Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
But before Wreck-It Ralph, I think it had been Toy Story 3 2 years earlier. I really did love that Winnie the Pooh movie. It came out in 2011.
Yeah.
But I can't. There is just not an animated movie anywhere in the foreseeable future that I'm really excited about. And I haven't been. I wasn't, as much as I loved it, I wasn't excited for Wreck-It Ralph when it was coming out.
The Lego movie was also something you weren't really excited for either.
Yeah. And I did like it really well.
Yeah.
But even though animated movies keep coming out, and half of them I don't like and half of them I do, they're just not an exciting thing. I don't know if it's just like a slump I'm in with animated movies. Or
it might be. You might need to go back to the roots and watch some old school animation.
Well, I have been, yeah. And yeah, that's...
I'm sure that helped last week.
Yeah. I think it's honestly maybe it's the computer animation is making the characters a little distant now.
I can see that.
Like when you go back and watch like the hand-drawn movies, there's just something just amazing about that. And yeah, there are, amazing things in the computer animated ones, obviously, but I just don't feel that excitement for them anymore. Well, even going back to Toy Story 3, actually, remember I was telling you that I wasn't excited when Toy Story 3 came out. I thought it was a bad idea. Yeah. Obviously, it was one of the best movies of that year, and that was a really good year.
Yeah, it was.
But leading up to it, before I saw it, I wasn't excited for it at all. Maybe 2009 did me in. Because 2009 had Coraline, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Up, The Princess and the Frog, and Mary and Max.
Yeah.
Maybe that was too much in one year, and now my expectations are too high. Well, technically, they're too low.
It's possible. I mean, I've always been like, since Coraline, when Paranorman came out, I really dug Paranorman, and I really am looking forward to the box rolls.
There was a great bunch of stuff. Frankenweenie is fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's my problem, though, is I can't get excited. I can like them or hate them, but I can't get excited for them, and that bums me out.
I mean, Big
Because I
Hero,
wanna be.
Big Hero 6 looks awesome.
Because somebody asked me how excited well, that's the thing. Somebody asked me how excited I was for How to Train Your Dragon because they weren't aware of my thoughts on the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just said, not at all. And when they looked puzzled, I said, well, no, you got the wrong idea. I don't think it's going to be bad. I just am not excited at all.
It's hard to get excited for movies anymore, it seems like now, especially for your deal, because you don't watch trailers anymore.
Because when we started doing the reviews, we've been watching every movie that comes out every week in one day, usually.
Yeah, normally.
And it's always the animated movie that I dread like it's going to be a chore.
And it's always the last one, too.
Yeah.
We always make it like seeming to be the last movie of the day. It never fails.
Maybe that's what did it. Always making it the last movie, and I'm practically giving up on life by that point.
It's possible, depending on what else we put in the day.
But no, we saw How to Train Your Dragon by itself last night,
Yep.
so that has nothing to do with it. So I don't know. I hope I'm just not, I don't know.
Yeah, you and the weird thing is I'm going to out you on this one, too. We always talk about Tangled being the one thing that you disagree with, but you're not a big fan of Frozen either.
Brave is worse.
Yeah, I think Brave is probably the worst one for you right now.
Well, Tangled's the worst of the three, but I don't know. Maybe Tangled did this.
I like Tangled, obviously. I mean, it's got Mandy Moore as the voice of Rapunzel. I mean, I'm not gonna say no to that.
Because I said Toy Story 3 was besides Wreck-It Ralph, Toy Story 3 was the last one before then that I really liked, and Tangled came out later that year. Maybe Tangled is what killed my love for animated movies.
Like you said, the hand-drawn animation is a lot different than watching something that's computer-generated. Like, Princess and the Frog was hand-drawn. And, I mean, that goes back several years, so...
I don't know. But I don't think, regardless of that, I don't think I was going to like How to Train Your Dragon 2 anyway.
Neither did I. I think we're on this island by ourselves right now, and everybody else is, like, throwing rocks at us because we don't conform to the way they think.
Well, unless they have the magic ticket from Life Action Hero, they won't hit us.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's a bummer. So, I'm sure there's gotta be something to, like, rekindle my love or something.
I think something's coming. I don't know exactly what it is right off the top. Maybe Big Hero is the way that's going to get everything in. Maybe it's the box trolls. I mean, it's got that same Coraline, Paranorman, like it's from the same guys anyway. It's not Selig, but I mean, it looks good. You can't say anything because you don't watch trailers anymore, so... Well, it's Friday the 13th, so it's a good idea that we should probably make a lot of this video about horror, so...
We have 3 horror movies in a row to talk about.
Segue, folks. Segue.
Taking a totally different direction now. It's almost like it should be 2 different videos.
I'm riding it right in, segue.
Okay, our first horror movie is Willow Creek, which was really intriguing because... It is a found-footage horror movie about Bigfoot, written and directed by Bob Guy Goldthwait.
That just sounds awesome. It just really does.
Bob Guy Goldthwait has made a movie about bestiality, a drunk clown that gets involved in murder, a father who hides his son's accidental death by autoerotic asphyxiation, and God Bless America about a murderous little girl and a guy with a brain tumor.
All these movies are good.
So, God Bless America kind of left an ugly taste in my mouth, and I'm all about movies that go dark.
I really liked God Bless America, but I didn't like the fact that it seemed a little familiar.
The World's Greatest Dad was fantastic.
Yes, it was.
And Shakes the Clown.
It is what it is.
Yes, watch SpongeBob SquarePants as a murderous clown and Shakes the Clown. You will not regret it. Anyway, Willow Creek is, I wasn't sure what to expect, because obviously Bob Goldthwait's a very capable writer and director.
Yeah.
But, as you've seen before, the found-footage horror genre is practically dead to me.
Yes.
So, unless it's like documentary style like it was in The Sacrament. But Bob Guy Goldthwait has restored my faith. because this movie is... Well, for starters, it starts with... This might sound a little familiar, but bear with me. The movie starts, and we have a couple. They're basically the only two people in the movie, with the exception of, like, townspeople and, all them. They're riding into town to do this documentary. She's basically like this... I don't know, she's like a low-rent director. Like, she probably does, like, commercials and TV stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making this documentary about the search for Bigfoot and the area he's best known for, where it's like they have statues of Bigfoot and they have like a burger place devoted to him, and they have like all the townspeople just 24 hours a day obsess over the Bigfoot mystery. And that's what the whole town is, and that's the town they've driven into. And that's the thing. That is the key. Bobcat Goldthwait has found the key to found footage horror. This movie does not spend time and waste time on building up the couple as characters. It focuses on the task at hand. The movie is only like an hour 20, and it is just right to the point. The movie is not about how wonderful they think they are so we can be sad if something bad happens to them. The whole movie is about strictly the search for Bigfoot. They just happen to be the two characters that we're following do this. And they have, some subtle and not so subtle developments as the movie goes on. But the movie never strays from the task at hand. It's not a half an hour, it's not like 45 minutes of bullshit and then a half an hour of just being stranded in the woods.
Mm.
The whole movie is about one thing.
That's good. It's a good start right there.
And that is where a lot of found footage horror movies fail. So they do, and what's great about it, what's just really, I don't even know how he did this or if this is exactly what he did, but the movie feels so authentic. They go around and there's like, just various townspeople, there's skeptics, there's witnesses, there's experts, there's like a bookstore clerk that knows all this. They interview like an old woman that, she's like in charge of like tourism and the Bigfoot legend, but when they interview her, she says, I don't believe in that at all, that's ridiculous. And then there's like a guy with a sad story that claims his dog was ripped in half by Bigfoot. These interviews are so authentic and these people feel so real. It's almost like I said, it almost makes me, I don't know for sure, but it almost makes me question if they just grabbed actual people that like believe in the Bigfoot legend and interviewed the real people. It feels like real interviews with people that have these crazy ass theories.
There's a way to make your authenticity work for you that way.
Or they just might be really awesome actors.
It's possible.
But either one works really well. So that's basically what the first half is. And like I said, they do the, we do the, they're kind of cutesy with each other because they're an actual couple and all that, but it doesn't dwell on that to where it doesn't beat you over the head with, how real and wonderful they are. They're just kind of naturally there. It's Alexi Gilmore from World's Greatest Dad and another guy, I'm not quite sure, I think his name is Bryce Johnson.
That is correct.
And they just have a natural quality about them that's the thing, they're basically so natural, they don't have to force they're an amazing couple on you. You just kind of get that vibe from watching them. Like with her directing him with the documentary and all that. So naturally, now of course, despite how fresh the movie does feel, they do throw in the cliches, like, They do a self-referential thing where she says, "Oh, it's like every other horror movie. We're driving into the woods, and I've now lost my cell reception." They have the people in town that warn them not to go out there. There's the one guy in particular where they're getting ready to just go right out there where everything supposedly is, and there's like some redneck out there that stops them, who's very aggressive about getting them out of here. And his response is, you need to turn the car around, you need to drive all the way back, go back into town, and you need to go get a slice of pie at the Fuck Off Cafe.
Peace.
And they do the cliche where the guy says, "I need you to turn the camera off," and they say, "Okay," and put the camera down without turning it off. That's in there. But the Far Off Cafe guys, who they do that to. But of course, they ignore all warnings and go into the woods at night, where they're gonna camp out and see if anything happens. Now, they've done some really interesting things with this build-up, because that's the thing. The horror, when it happens, is effective because you've had this build-up about, questioning. Another thing they do that's really good is, instead of the couple just talking about bullshit for no reason and just trying to be cutesy and real, a lot of their dialogue is actual full-on discussions about maybe why Bigfoot could exist, but why he may not also, and their own theories. Now, once they actually get out in the woods, is when the horror strikes, which is about halfway through the movie, like you'd normally expect. But they've handled it. They've handled the material so well. The movie just flies by. It's not like one of those, okay, we've had enough bullshit, let's get to the horror now. It just kind of gradually gets itself there and has been building up to it the whole time. And now the question is what Goldthwait does here that's really fantastic is I know this is a cliche thing to talk about how great it is, but this movie in particular uses it really, really well. It's you have horror by not showing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can seem like... I can imagine a lot of people hating this movie. Probably in the same vein they hated Godzilla. And it might seem like really cheap and amateur, kind of, because it's the use of sound and what you don't see in the darkness that is the scary thing. And there was this one scene towards the end of the movie. I don't know how long the scene was, but it had to be a large chunk, but I wasn't paying attention because this scene is terrifying. It is one really long scene in one cut that doesn't break, where the camera is just sitting, they're in their tent, and the camera's sitting here, and they turn it on, and they turn the light on. And they're just sitting up in the tent listening, because they think they hear, like, a little noise in the distance. And this scene is practically masterful in the way it's done. Because in, like, maybe the 15 minutes that this one long take takes place, the horror builds and builds because it's not in your face, ever. But it starts in the very distance, where they're not even sure they heard anything at all. It might have just been like a tiny sound that's nothing. But then more sounds start to happen. And then they start to hear, like, a call that may or may not be human. That's another thing, that doubt of whether... Obviously, there's the doubt in the Bigfoot legend altogether, so what happens to them may or may not be just some human fucking with them.
Yeah.
But it starts off as a sound that they're not even sure they heard at all, because it's just so silent in the distance. But the sounds get closer and closer and closer until they're right outside the tent. And the scene never breaks. And Alexia Gilmore is so good in this scene. She's good in the whole movie, but she is so fantastic in this scene. It's not even what is going on outside and what is outside the tent, and any possibility of what that could be, is a terrifying thing. But what makes the scene all the more terrifying is watching her, because her fear is so realistic. It makes it more terrifying to watch her be afraid of whatever it is, as opposed to what it actually is, whatever that is. And I thought that scene was just really, really brilliant, and really, really utilizes that you don't have to show something for it to be absolutely scary thing. But like I said, it may not work for all people. A lot of people may think it's like really cheap and lame. But it really, really worked for me. Now, as far as the ending, without giving anything away, normally in found footage horror movies, or any horror movie really, It's very commonplace for, even if it's a really good horror movie, or at least a really decent one. It's kind of commonplace nowadays to where if you build up enough tension in horror, your chances are you're going to be really underwhelming and shit the bed with your climax. Well, what he does, like I said, I don't think I'm saying too much, but the ingenious thing that Goldthwait does is he sticks to the keeping everything shattered in the darkness. And the last shot of this movie is so jolting. Yeah. This whole movie really works from beginning to end and feels so... It really sticks with you because it seriously feels like you. This is the first movie in a very, very long time where the whole point of a found footage movie is for you to be frightened because, as the genre says, you're supposed to feel like you've just picked up someone's camera and you're seeing what happened to them from their own perspective. This is the first movie in a long time that has actually accomplished that. Like, I almost forgot that I had seen Alexa Gilmore in other movies. Because she didn't look like an actress in a Bobcat Goldthwait movie. She looked like a fucking terrified human being. Now, if you were to take Bigfoot out of the equation, I have basically just described the Blair Witch Project. Which I'm sure you were telling yourself that whole time. Yeah, apparently this movie's main criticism is apparently critics think that it takes a little too much from that. But I haven't seen Blair Witch in forever. I probably need to watch it again soon. But I haven't seen it in a while, but I don't remember it being as effective as this. I think this might work a lot. Because... Yeah, a lot of the criticism towards Blair Witch was it was a lot of... There's no... Every single found footage movie is 10-minute segments after 10-minute segments of people running around in the dark screaming other characters' names.
Yep.
Which Blair Witch was guilty of in a particular portion. This isn't that kind of movie. They're always together, and it's not them just wandering around in darkness. Every scene manages to have this eerie atmosphere or something terrifying happening in it. None of it feels redundant. So that is really how you need to do this genre. But now the problem is this movie and Bobcat Goldthwait have done it so well. I don't really know how you can... It'd be hard to imagine another found footage horror movie to come out that's as effective as this.
That's like what Cabin in the Woods did with the horror genre in general.
At least anytime soon. So, yeah. It's, I think it's got like a really limited release, and it's available on iTunes. So I would definitely, well, it depends on who you are. I don't know. I don't know exactly how, like, mainstream horror audiences would take to it. I think they'll think it's, like, lame and not, like... I mean, not to degrade them, I'm just saying, you know, that may just be the reaction they have. But it totally worked for me in every aspect. So... Because there are plenty of ways that the same movie could have been made under a less talented director, and it could have been a piece of shit. But the way those scenes were handled was just absolutely perfect. That one scene in the tent is completely and totally unforgettable. And brings a whole new meaning to being afraid of sounds in the dark. If that's the kind of thing that freaks you out. So yeah, if you're one of those people that is afraid of, like, hearing things in the night and not knowing what's out there, this movie at least has the potential to scare the holy shit out of you. So, it's, like I said, even if you don't like it, it's worth a try, because it's only an hour and 20 minutes. That's not very long. So, but I think it's worth checking out, personally. We're going to continue with our Creek theme. Our next movie is I thought it was straight to video, but it had like a really small release, a small theatrical release in like May or June or something. Or this is June, May. And its DVD comes out at the end of the month. That's what I was thinking of when I said June. I don't know how many people saw the original movie in 2005. It got a wide release, but not many people knew what it was. This was back in the Saw era, where before we had franchises, we had these little indie horror movies that somehow got wide releases and then got followings.
Yeah.
This might have supposed to have been one of those movies, but it's coming out like almost a decade later. And the first one's main push was how much Tarantino tried to get it out there. You'll notice John Jarrett, the killer in the movie, was one of the Quinn-Dickie guys in Django. If you didn't see the first movie, it's set in Australia, and we follow 3 people who are out on vacation, and their car breaks down, and they get picked up by a mechanic named Mick Taylor, and they get drugged and brutally murdered by him. And it was supposedly based on actual events. Because a lot of horror movies love to pull that card now, as we talked about before, I'm sure. Apparently, what they did was take 3... It's like Fargo. They took 3 totally unrelated events and very, very loosely put them together to make a totally 100% fiction movie. And now they've made this sequel. I'm not sure who asked for this sequel, but it's the same director. John Jarrett's back as Mick Taylor. And honestly, when the movie started, I thought there might have been a mix-up. And I was, I had accidentally been given a copy of the first movie again. Because they do this, it starts with, it says based on actual events. And then this text comes up, the statistics on people that go missing and like how many of them are found, stuff like that. It's the exact same text in the exact same order, in the exact same opening. It wasn't until the fade in and the first opening shot that I was confident I was watching the sequel and not the first one again. So the first one was notoriously gruesome. They didn't show as much as you would expect, but they showed enough. It's famous for like the head on a stick scene and the fingers being cut off. Did you see the first one?
I think I may have skipped it. I saw Turistas, which came out around that same time too. But I don't remember actually watching Wolf Creek. I remember walking it.
Turistas is a pretty different thing.
Yeah. I remember walking Wolf Creek, but I don't remember not seeing it.
Turistas went into the whole organs thing. This is, I can't believe I remember Turistas. This thing is simply a killer kills people. No motivations, he's just a killer that kills people. And Mick Taylor is a really great scary ass villain. Because John Jarrett plays him with this perfect balance of, basically when you see him, when they meet him, he's the nicest guy in the world. He's the mechanic that's not going to charge them, and he's going to help them out just because it's the right thing to do. He's going to help them. He's going to let them stay at his camp. But then he also perfectly plays the psychotic murderer, rapist, necrophile, anything you can think of. He does it. And he does it so well that you totally buy him as either, because he does the whole thing again. Once again, this is the 3rd sequel we've talked about now, and it's the same thing. It's basically the same formula. But the thing is John Jarrett plays him so well, is we saw everything that went down in the first movie. When he reappears again in this one, and does the nice guy act again, he's so good at it, despite the fact that you saw all that horror and carnage in the first movie, you still almost somewhat buy that he's still a nice guy. But no, then he goes into full-on horror mode, and it's basically, you can kind of tell, it's basically trying to be the same formula as the original, but more over the top. The first scene of the movie is him being pulled over by a couple of cops, who he's not speeding, but I guess it's their quota thing or that, entitlement thing. But they stop him anyway and say that he was speeding even though he wasn't, and he knows he wasn't. And they give him a ticket. The opening carnage of this movie happens because Mick Taylor got a speeding ticket. And when I say what they do, obviously when you make a horror sequel, generally what they do is they intentionally go a lot more over the top and try to make it like a grander thing.
Of course.
As we saw in the first movie, Mick Taylor's weapon of choice he has many, but his main weapon of choice is his rifle. Because that's what he does, he likes to hunt people. Zaroff was probably his name in the original script. So he is basically, we see him shoot people in the first movie, and they get a bullet in the back and they fall down dead. In this one, in the amped up sequel, he shoots one of the cops in the head from a distance, and their head entirely explodes. It's one of those movies. And they basically spend the whole movie trying to amp it up. Despite probably out of spite too, because the main criticism about the first movie was how over the top and just disturbing and gruesome the first one was, and how relentless it was. Well, they basically try to top that with every scene, and they do the same formulas again. That is the thing, though. One thing I will give this movie credit for is it does know that it's a sequel. And you can tell that, number one, because of how much it's trying to amp up the gore. And number two, all the plot points in the first one that were surprises, they could have fucked up and just completely retreaded the first one. But they're smart enough to make the stuff that were surprises in the first movie just commonplace now. Like, it's a big reveal in the first movie when she's going back through the footage they were filming earlier when she finds the video camera in Mick's garage. And she can see Mick's truck in the background of all the footage, and it's revealed that he was following them the whole time. In this movie, it's just a blatant fact that he follows them around before he kills them. And yeah, speaking of that, you have this formula. Now, I know it's probably supposed to be a little shocking, Marion Crane syndrome, where you basically start off with one, Death Proof did too. You basically start off with one group, you make the audience think that's the group they're going to follow the whole movie, and then you kill them off shockingly, and then you actually end up following somebody else to the end. That's kind of what the first one did. Like, it's not like midway through, it's all towards the end when they actually start dying, but they kind of did that with the girl that you think is going to be the main girl and the main survivor is actually the first one to go. But then the others just follow right after. But this one tries to do the Marion Crane thing, where for the first 20 minutes or so of the movie, we follow around this couple who is vacationing, exactly like the people in the first one. And then, lo and behold, their car breaks down and Mick decides to help them. And we see it play out the same way. But like I said, they want to amp up the gore. So instead of, doing head on a stick where he stabs the girl in the back and paralyzes her or cutting off her fingers, he takes the same knife and stabs the dude, then cuts the dude's head off. But that's not all. What he likes to do is, obviously, when you kill animals while hunting, you take them and you dismember them and you cut them up and do all that. That's what he does to the people. There's been this craze lately. You can go to comedies like 21 Jump Street, you can go to horror movies like VHS. There seems to be a sudden craze, a sudden recent rise in the rate of severed dicks in movies. Maybe it's just because I've seen too many movies that I've seen this so many times lately. We almost got that scene in Django.
Yeah.
For some reason, severed dicks is a trend now. And this movie likes to follow suit with that. So we're treated to that. But then we're introduced... We think the girl is going to be saved by this one guy, but of course, she dies immediately. And this guy is who our hero is. And this guy is sickeningly good. Obviously, he's the good guy because he has a love at home. She might be with child, too. It wouldn't surprise. I think they said that. I don't remember. This is how sickeningly good he is. Now, I understand. Those cute little things you do when you're in love with somebody, but this just kind of made me laugh out loud. When you put somebody's name in your phone, you can, I've put a heart next to a name.
So have I.
You can put their name and then like maybe a little nickname you have for them beside them.
Yep.
This guy gets a call from his wife. And he is so in love that her name on his phone, when she calls, comes up as no name. It's not her name and then this in parentheses. This is how her name is programmed into his phone. Her picture comes up, and her name in his phone is My Angel. So, needless to say, this guy has something to live and fight for. Remember that later. Because that's the blatant ass clue to this. Now here's the thing. They've done something to Mick Taylor's character here. Now mind you, he is an awesome villain. Especially in the last parts of the first movie. But what they've done here, they're doing, like I said, they realize they're a sequel, they're trying to go more extreme. So they're trying to make him more extreme. So, what they do is... There's one chase scene in particular where he's driving, and he's like driving right up to them, and he's like got his knife out, and he's close enough where he can just tap on the passenger side window as he's chasing them. But what this scene did, and what happens, it's more than one scene too, but this scene is what made me start thinking this. Do you remember in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, when in the first movie Freddy Krueger was really, really scary, and the stuff nightmares were made of? And then when you got to, like, the Dream Child and Freddy's dead, he basically became this over-the-top comedy character. Midway through Wolf Creek 2, Mick Taylor is on the verge of Freddy's dead Freddy Krueger. Maybe they were going for some campy vibe. I don't know. It's kind of hard to take a movie on the campy side when it starts with, this is a real statistic about the number of people that disappear in the Australian outback. That's how scary we are. This is based on real events that didn't really happen. There's a point in time where he's in a semi, and it's like a cross between the scene in, with the T-1000 in Terminator 2 and Duel. There's one scene where they're really reaching for shock value. Really reaching for shock value. What you do, I'm not trying to be one of those really sensitive animal lovers. Though I really think it's uncool. I know you're not doing it for real, but it's still really uncool when they kill animals in movies. There's a scene where they're really reaching for shock value, where he's driving around in this semi like he's the fucking T-1000, and he's plowing down kangaroos. And they do it really over the top too, like, he's chasing the other guy, obviously. The guy will hit a kangaroo, the kangaroo will fly into the air and smash into the truck. And gore galore will happen. And sometimes he's just running them over. And they think they're being really clever by playing the Lion Sleeps Tonight song while this happens. That's another thing this movie does. It basically tries to be really, clever and ironic with its soundtrack. Like, We've got a fucking scene where he kills a couple of old people while, like, a classical piece plays. It's a really... I can't remember which one it is now. But you'll know it when you hear it. And then we finally get to a big, long ending, where it basically turns into... Not the first movie, not any of the remakes. The end of this movie basically turns into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. The one that Tobe Hooper still did with Dennis Hopper, but it really fucking sucked. The layer in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is basically where the end of Wolf Creek 2 takes place. And there's this really long scene where, I don't know why Mick is suddenly buddy-buddy after all the shit we've seen him do. But, the guy basically starts to... He's got the guy tied to a chair. And he's basically saying he's going to torture and kill him like he does everybody else. But the guy basically starts to joke around with him. And Mick starts to like him. So, there's this big long sequence where Mick ties one of his hands down and says, okay, I'm going to actually give you the chance to get out of here. We're going to play a game of Australian trivia. And for every answer you get wrong, you're going to lose a finger. And if you can get through the game with any fingers intact, you can leave. It's not as enticing or thrilling or suspenseful as it sounds. But it does leave a lot of room for John Jarrett to go really, really over the top. And of course, you know, they use the gore for that. But the problem with it is, I didn't really like the first movie either, but it had a really, really nice grindhouse feel to it. There's actually, during the Death Proof chase, at the end of Grindhouse, when Stuntman Mike drives through that movie sign, Wolf Creek is one of the movies on the sign. And it's got a really great grindhouse feel. I especially love the scenes where he's chasing them around in the car at the very end. That felt really like classic grindhouse to me, which I think is kind of what they were going for. Especially since, you know, it was so heavily advertised by Tarantino himself. This movie does not have any of that in it. And it's basically all trying way too hard. It's trying to top itself in gore and shock value. And, I mean, when you're throwing in severed dicks and running over kangaroos, you're really desperate to get shock value.
Oh,
yeah. And it doesn't work because it just comes off as trying way too hard. So, the first one did feel, as much as I really don't care for it, it did come off naturally sadistic. This, not so much at all. I'm actually kind of surprised it's the same director, because it almost seems like it'd be one of those movies where it was some no-talent directed-DVD director that was trying to top the first one with such things as gore and shock value, but it just doesn't work. But I'm basically saying that I wouldn't seek it out. Especially, well, even if you were a fan of the first one, it's not the same thing. It's this cartoony version of what that was. We're getting worse. Our last horror movie is a movie called Haunt, which was like on the calendar for like September last year, but nobody knew what it was, and then it just quietly got taken off. And then they just kind of threw it into this year. I'm not even sure when its exact release date was, but I saw it this past week. Haunt starts with... Okay. Haunt is one of those movies where the beginning of it is murders inside a house. The murder of a family by a ghost. And the dad is the only one left. And he has this box that can summon ghosts. I guess that's what it does. And then he's killed by the ghost. And the only survivor of this family was Jackie Weaver. Yeah, random choice, isn't it?
Yeah, big time.
2-time Oscar nominee Jackie Weaver. And she gives us a narration about what happened. And lo and behold, what do you think the movie does from here?
Same stuff as everything else?
A new family moves in.
Of course.
You have a father, a mother. Ione Skye is the mother. Where's she been?
Weird.
From the Rachel Papers and Say Anything. And there's 2 daughters and a teenage boy. Which one do you think our hero is?
The teenage boy, of course.
So, we get our backstory, and they move in, and there's all that. The house is really gloomy, and things lurk in the shadows, and every time, like, they'll just be doing a menial task, and then, like, a shadow will go by the camera, and the score will scream at you.
I hate those.
Oh, you would adore this movie.
That's the reason I'm not going to
I was having
it. flashbacks
flashbacks of the quiet ones, actually.
Oh, no.
It wasn't that bad, but it's pretty close. So, we're introduced to another character. We're introduced to Jenny from Forrest Gump. No. Actually, it is Leanna Labrada, I think is how you're saying. The girl from Trust and a couple other things. Stuck in Love and a couple of other things. She's a nice young actress that... she's fine. She's not a terrible, but, you know... She could be using her youth as an actor to get some, work on it. To put that in the nicest way possible. And she has a really abusive dad that drinks all the time and is always screaming at her. So she runs away, and she likes to basically crawl into this kid's house in the middle of the night and sleep in his bed to get away from her drunk dad. You get the Jenny connection yet?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, though. The first time we see her, okay, they've just moved into this house. I don't know where... They came from a whole different city, I think. But of course, this girl has been here a while. She knows the secrets. She knows what happened here. So naturally they have to meet so they can, go ghost hunting together.
Sounds like a Fanning character.
But
Either Dakota or Elle, one of the two.
So what happens is they have just moved into town, and this kid is, I forgot his name already, but he's basically walking around in the middle of the woods at night, and it's been snowing. And he comes across this girl after having just run away from her dad for, I guess this is probably a nightly thing. And she's just sitting in the woods by herself, like, crying. Just waiting for somebody to come and comfort her. Wow, she got really lucky on this one.
Yeah.
So this guy that she has never met before approaches her, and he's approaching a girl he's never met before, and he basically says 2 sentences to comfort her. And she gives him a kiss on the cheek, and they're instantly in love. I'm not even exaggerating on that 2 sentences thing. And then she runs back home. But now, it starts to get to a point to where she's doing the thing where she crawls into his bed in the middle of the night. They still have just met, by the way. But regardless, this becomes a thing. A lot of this movie is their little romance blossoming from this. And this is the really funny thing. These parents, this kid's parents, are the easiest going people I've ever seen in my life. Probably is more easygoing than the husband and the hand that rocks the cradle. What they do is, she's gone up there for the first night. They have been moved into this house for 2 nights. So, this is the night where she has crept into the bedroom in the middle of the night. So, the sun rises and morning comes. And we're in the kitchen and everybody's doing their routine. No, the living room. And everybody's doing their morning routine. The dad's late for work. He's got his suit jacket halfway on and all that. And the kid comes downstairs with the girl. They're not hiding anything. And the parents quickly prove to us why they're not worried about hiding anything. This girl that he met, when they've been in town for 2 days, he comes downstairs with. They don't think a thing of it. He gets a "who's your friend?"
Oh, wow.
And they kind of hint at it. Like, the parents in private say, maybe we'll talk about that later, won't we? I guess he means they're going to talk about that amongst themselves. They're not going to talk to the kid at all. And that's left at that. And it basically turns into the, remember what I was talking about with the original Endless Love? Yeah. Where it was really weird because he basically just moved into their house practically. And basically got to bang their daughter whenever he pleased. It's kind of the reverse case here. I think we're supposed to assume they sympathize because she has a drunk dad. But she's just in their house constantly. She takes showers there, she sleeps there, she bangs him almost every night. They met 2 days ago in the fucking woods after exchanging a couple of sentences. But no, this is supposed to be serious. Their love. So, now, here's the thing. Then we start to learn about the ghosts. Paranormal stuff starts to happen. There's this decrepit woman-looking ghost. Looks like one of the things from House of a Thousand Corpses.
Oh boy.
That just pops out and goes like every 5 minutes. So they gotta figure out who this is. And naturally, let's talk about more about the easygoing parents. Number one, despite all the blah that's happening, they're totally not buying this ghost thing. They just think it's them having fun. These kids are like probably 16 or 15, maybe older than that. I don't know, but they basically think that the ghost thing is basically them playing.
They're in trouble.
It's the most oblivious parents you'll ever see. There is a really, really funny scene involving, he's basically, okay, his mom's gonna give him the speech now about, you do realize you're in this girl for 2 days, right? But that's not how it goes. It's not about the fact that he's known her for so little. It's just that, he wants to be so helpful to her. And, they're sitting on the couch, and it's a mother and her son. And he's talking about how, I just want to help her because her dad's drunk, and she has to put up with a lot of stuff, and she's lonely. So I think she should, like, live with us.
That's gonna go over well.
Do you know what the mom says?
You said they're very oblivious. I'm gonna guess she probably says something like, you're probably right.
She looks at him, and she says, do you know what I love about you? My first thought was, he's your son, I hope it's everything. But no, her line is, do you know what I love about you? You're kind. That's how she feels about him having this girl live with them. This total stranger live with them. And it's left at that.
What?
Yep, that's the last they touch on it. And to make matters worse, when the movie's climax comes, how do you think the confrontation with them and the ghost happens? The mother, the father, the 2 daughters are gonna leave town for the day. I forget what they're doing, but they're leaving. They're going elsewhere. All day. Until midnight. And they think absolutely nothing of leaving these 2 alone in the house.
Oh boy.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but they fucking got what was coming to them.
Oh, wow.
Now, here's the problem. There's a lot of problems. I guess we can go into the jump scare bullshit real quick. This is one of those movies that feeds off it. And it's all those minuscule things, like, there's one scene where it's, God, there's so many of them. Okay, the first one is, there is a portrait of Jackie Weaver's son, one of the people that was murdered in the house, in a cabinet. And he opens the cabinet, and the portrait's there. And the score screams at us. The picture is not all that threatening, but the score screams at us anyway. The Crown Jewel is another horror movie that did something like this not that long ago. One of the really bad ones, I forget which one it was, but this one brings it back. It's one of those ones where he's in the kitchen, and we pan back, and we see blonde hair. Obviously, it's his sister. You can tell it's his sister immediately. But for some reason, you can tell they're going to try to do something scary with this. Because as we pan back and see, like, the back of her head, the score is building. When we know it's her. So what they do here is, he turns and he looks, and we get the shot of the sister. Big surprise, it's the sister. But do you know how I know that the movie wants us to think it's a surprise that it's his sister and not the ghost? Because we just get a cut of his sister standing there, and the score screams at us again.
I hate that.
And they do it again when, okay, so she's already climbed into bed with him once, but she's doing it again. So it's not a surprise. But it's like the second time that she does it. He rolls over, she's there. The score screams at us again. Jeez. Oh, God. So, did I miss one? Oh, yes. Okay. Here's one. The ghost that's in the house. The decrepit-looking one.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. She's there. She's visible. We know it's the ghost. It is the total opposite of the sister scene. We knew exactly who that was. Now we know exactly who this is. We know this is the ghost. Because we've seen the ghost. It's there. It's right here in front of our eyes. But it just has its head turned away. Now, a really cool shot here probably would have been like, say like the ghost kind of turns its head around and stares at them. Or like the zoom shot in The Conjuring when the thing's on the arm, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The ghost is turned one way, and we see, it happens so quickly it's almost like it's just a cut and then it's facing this way. But the ghost is facing that way, and then suddenly the ghost is facing this way, and the score screams at Jesus.
If you watch this movie on mute, I wonder what it have effect was.
Oh, God. So, oh, and there's another one of those ones where, there's the, and you know it's fucking coming too because of the way the scene's set up. The girl is in a room, the younger daughter is basically starting to act like one of the girls from Mama.
Oh, no.
And, she's laying on her bed and she's talking. And the kid walks in, and he's like, "Hey, you okay in here?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just hanging out here by myself." So he leaves, and we linger forever on the open bedroom door and her in bed talking. And it's one of those shots where one of the ghosts just slides into frame and the score screams at us. It also does the closing a door by itself really loudly in one scene. You know, that old thing. And now here's the problem. The movie does actually strive to be atmospheric.
Mm-hmm.
It actually, you can tell there's maybe one or two scenes where it's actually trying a little bit. There's one really big issue, though.
Mm-hmm.
This movie does not have an original bone in its body. Pretty much every scene in this movie reminded me of another movie. There's a really, really loud sound design. Like, with 13 Ghosts. Like when Jackie Weaver's telling the story at the beginning, and it's like grainy footage with like flashes in front of us of like dead faces with really loud sound. When we're getting the backstories of the ghosts and 13 Ghosts. when they first moved into the house, I was really getting a lot of vibes from the first season of American Horror Story. I was getting a lot of Murder House vibes. Are you surprised, given the plot of the movie, that it reminded me of a TV show called Murder House?
No, not at all.
And I was also... There are actually some scenes that try to be atmospheric, and I was actually starting to get vibes from... there was a movie that practically nobody saw with Kieran Hines called The Eclipse. That was like this romance drama that happened to have ghosts in it. I was getting some vibes from that movie, too. But this movie basically tries to do all that, but have the, the screaming, loud noises, score thing going on. There are 2 effective scenes in this movie. There are actually 2 scenes where they didn't throw the score in our face. There's one scene where he and the girl are hanging out by the pool, and they're just talking and shooting the shit or whatever, and we see one of the ghost girls just hanging out in the background briefly. It's only in one shot. Mm-hmm. Now, we do know that it would have been better if it was silent and they were just talking and she was just hanging out back there, but we know she's there because the score does do a little thing. But, that's better than having it scream at us, and it wasn't right in our face. It was kind of cool if she was lingering back there. And there's a good scene with the youngest daughter where, a scene starts and she's sitting in the living room, and everybody's talking about... They're trying to convince the parents about the ghosts. And it looks like she's sitting at a table just, drawing or something. And the scene goes by, and then when they're talking about what to do about the ghost, the daughter says, why don't we just make friends with them? Because, maybe if we make friends with them, they won't hurt anybody. And they think that's a little weird because she seems a little overly friendly with the ghosts. And then the scene's about to end, and we see that she's not drawing, but she has a family portrait, and she's scratching out everybody's eyes.
Oh, man, not that again.
That would have been a really effective scene in another movie, but,
Like I said, not that again.
What movie are you thinking of?
There's a lot of movies where people just, automatically see these family portraits. Sometimes it's just, cartoon drawings, and they just scratch out their eyes.
It was amongst a scene where it was it was a good payoff, because it looks like she's just doing something innocent through the whole scene. And another thing they tried to do with the atmosphere, but it's just, painful and stupid and obvious, but, obviously we've learned about the murders, and we've seen the crime pictures during Jack Weaver's narration. We've seen, the body splayed out and everything. But they really, really want to nail it in, so, we get the scene where they move in at the beginning, and pretty much every time they pass by where somebody was murdered, it's black and white footage over that scene of them dead in that spot. Even though we know that's where they died, so the gloom is kind of already there if you had just left it alone, but, fuck it, I guess.
It does sound like 13 Ghosts a lot.
So it doesn't... Whenever it does try to have those atmospheric moments, which it's very little, it's usually ruined with a wah thing. So, yeah. There's, I have no idea what the beginning is trying to say. It starts with the definition. It's one of those things where the definition comes on the screen. The dictionary definition. It's the dictionary definition of haunt. But it's not the verb definition, it's the noun definition. Where apparently it means a feeding place for animals. It's the definition of haunt that means a feeding place for animals, and that's what the opening shot of the movie is. I have no idea what that means in context with this movie. I'm sure they think they do, and they have some kind of meaning behind it, but I wasn't getting anything. So yeah, as the shitty horror movies with no originality whatsoever continue to pile on, and with no talent behind their camera whatsoever, you can just throw this right on top of that pile. I'm sure we'll have plenty more to talk about.
Oh yeah. It's only June. There's probably at least 3 on the horizon now.
Alright. We've finally reached our last movie. Our last movie is a really, probably, completely, almost unknown movie altogether. it's a type of road trip movie starring Toni Collette and Thomas Hayden Church. Where, tell me if this sounds familiar. Toni Collette plays a journalist, a music journalist that works for Oliver Platt. And she used to date a really famous rock star. But a long time ago, the legend is that rock star committed suicide by jumping off of a bridge and into a waterfall. But there have been sightings, and he might still be alive. He might have faked his death, or it might have just been an urban legend that got out of control. So, Oliver Platt gives her the job to go looking for this guy to do an interview with him, to find out if he's alive, and then do a story on it. And she brings along her ex, who is Thomas Hayden Church, who basically wants to make a documentary out of it. It's not told in that style or anything. We just see him holding a camera the whole movie.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that didn't go there. So basically, they wanted to make Searching for Sugar Man as a love story.
So random.
And that's what this movie is. But there is a side plot. Toni Collette is an extremely lonely woman. We know this because we see her first scene. She is naked and she's getting dressed, and she has just slept with a random indie musician. Those guys that stand out on the sidewalk with guitars and like, hey, could you put some money in this hat for me, please?
August Rush.
So, and that's what she does. This is like her whole routine. She basically sleeps with indie musicians, and that's just her thing all the time.
She's a Band-Aid. Yes.
These guys are not Stillwater. These are nothing lowlifes that don't even have anything, except they play a guitar on the street. And her only friend is her fish tank of seahorses. And she's getting lonelier and lonelier because one of them dies. So,
what is this?
Well, the opening. Well, I'm just throwing that in there because I imagine that's what they're trying to say. Because the opening scene, she's got her seahorse tank and she's happy, and it's like, oh, and then you just see one of them floating at the top.
Seahorses? That's just so random.
Well, it's an indie movie.
Okay, fair enough.
Indie movies live off being random and original.
True.
That's why you remake Searching for Sugar Man as a fictional love story.
It's true.
So, anyway, so she and Church go on this road trip. And that's basically what the movie is. They basically they get leads and they get possible ideas of where he might be. They go to his childhood home. And she, has all the memories of the time they had together because he's basically the only time she's been in love, and she's so jaded by him is why she just fucks random musicians every day. So, and then eventually we get to a climax where she may or may not run into him. You're probably never going to see this movie, so I can go ahead and tell you.
This sounds a little bit like Philomena. Just the bare bones. There's a couple things you said there kind of give me Philomena vibes.
Yeah, a little bit. And this movie is not, it's not great. It's not a bad movie, but it's not something that I'm like really all over and, recommending. Mm. Because Toni Collette is usually always great. Like I said, last year I was all over Mental.
Yeah.
Which I'm still recommending now if you haven't gone to it, which I'm sure you haven't. So, she is great in it. Oh, I didn't finish that. The other plot of the movie is, she has a relationship with another indie musician. She's walking by and he's playing, and she leaves him her business card. And they meet up, and they kiss, and she's like, oh no. She wants to interview him, and then during the interview she kisses him, she's like, oh no, I can't do this. Of course she does. And they start a relationship. But I don't know what to do here, because this is what makes the movie so unappealing, is this storyline, which is a way too large of a portion of it. You have a woman who sleeps with some random dude every night, and you have this dude who's one of those really whiny indie musicians. And they're trying to make this work. And the movie actually wants you to want it to work, I think, because they play it off really happy. But you know that this is totally unbelievable, and you know there's no way this could happen because we know her backstory now. We know this guy's also just going to be a notch later, whether she thinks it right now or not. But I think we're supposed to, want their love or something. Which also doesn't make sense when this movie basically... It tries to be ambiguous about it, but I think it's leading us to believe she gets a happy ending with somebody. And here's the thing, is, I can go ahead and tell you this because you're never going to see this movie. Lo and behold, she doesn't end up with that musician because she sleeps with another one. But the movie gives us a happy ending that leads us to believe she ends up with somebody else. But we've learned through the whole movie, that's not the game she plays.
Wow.
Okay, maybe I'm taking the ending the wrong direction. I don't know, but that's the vibe I was getting for sure. What keeps the movie afloat is Thomas Hayden Church's character. Because like I talked about, he is fantastic in everything. He was absolutely like Oscar-worthy in Killer Joe.
Yes.
And he's just great in everything. And he has this way of just impeccable deliveries. He can just say one simple line and make it hilarious. And he has a subplot where he falls in love with a prostitute played by Anna O'Reilly. There's a whole subplot where he gets her an animal for their wedding day. They meet, and like 30 days later, she's a prostitute. And they've met, and like 30 days later, they're getting married. And he gets her a pet, one of those exotic animals, as a present for her wedding day. And she opens the present, and it's dead. And then he comes back into the movie, and like a month has passed, and he's like, "Yeah, that's over now." Okay. There are two whole reasons for this movie to exist. Obviously, the story is not one of them.
No.
Obviously, somebody said, I'm going to watch Searching for Sugar Man, but I've got a perfect ending to it to get attention. Because the ending of the movie is the whole reason this movie was made, I think. But technically, there's another reason that it's more heartfelt. But the first reason is we do find her boyfriend at the end, and he is alive. And he's leading a whole new life. And it's a cameo. I wish I knew ahead of time because I went to IMDb when I know I shouldn't do that. And he's the very last on the cast list when it rolls. But I wish I had known because it would have been a really wild reveal. Because it is so not the kind of cameo you see coming in a movie like this. You have this tiny indie movie about a road trip and interviewing musicians that may or may not be dead. The big cameo at the end. Her boyfriend she's been searching the whole movie for is Johnny Depp. And he's in the movie for about 45 seconds before they part ways. And he never comes back. Pretty much the whole movie is just built up to that. And even if I didn't know it was going to be a cameo, I probably could have guessed because we supposedly see him in a video in the movie, but like a YouTube video, but his face is shrouded in shadows.
Of course.
So they're building him up.
Absolutely.
The second thing comes during the end credits. The executive producer is Joanne Woodward, and her voice is also in it. And I didn't know this at all, but some text comes up on the screen. I don't know what. It must be something between them that we'll never know. But and I don't know why it would be a movie like this but some text comes up on the screen, and basically making this movie as her love letter to Paul Newman. Like I said, I don't know how that connects, but it must be a personal thing between them. But
I would say so.
apparently, that's basically what this movie is what that quote leads us to believe. Like, she dedicates it to like the guy who made it impossible to ever fill in his footsteps after he's gone. So that made me feel bad for not being emotionally invested in the movie, because it clearly comes from a real place of heart, given that. But I wasn't feeling it. If it didn't have Thomas Hayden Church to be kind of the comedy relief, this movie would have been baffling. So, yeah. So, not only will you probably never see it, you don't need to either.
Ouch.
So, that's our last movie.
Alright. As always, let's run everything down real quick. We had 22 Jump Street.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you'll see it anyway, but if you need the, last push.
As of this moment, I was reading it actually as we're filming, it made $5 million last night, so, and Dragon only made 2, so it may actually win the box office like I was hoping it would this week.
How to Train Your Dragon's also not exactly the kind of movie that probably thrives on late shows.
No, not at all. Then, speaking of that, How to Train Your Dragon 2.
You're gonna love it, I know you are, but I didn't.
Willow Creek.
Yes, if you can track that down. Even if you hate it, at least give it a try. Maybe you'll love it as much as I did.
Wolf Creek 2.
Maybe if you like the first one and you're curious.
Haunt.
Never. No.
Lucky Them.
Not really.
Well, we seem kind of lopsided on this video this week. Next week, we are finally getting Jersey Boys. And, hey, I'm excited about this movie. Think Like a Man 2 is also there as well. And I know we have more stuff. AJ, what are our limited for next week?
We have Polanski's movie. Some movie with Chris Klein and that girl from The Big Bang Theory called Authors Anonymous.
Oh, okay, I saw that.
Some DVD releases, yeah. So.
And we have a tentative plan to see Cold in July sometime soon.
Hopefully.
We don't know when, but hopefully soon. And don't forget, Enemy and Snowpiercer are coming at the end of the month.
Among many other things.
Yes. Brand new Versus coming on Sunday, so we're going to get really epic for our 1-year anniversary. And that's all for today. Ashley's joining us tomorrow, exclusivity on video games, coming off E3, and that's all we got for today. So AJ, any parting words?